Hello and welcome to another Smaulgld live stream. It is Wednesday, the 13th of March, 2019. Welcome, Smaulgld mug stackers and game changers. And we're going to go through some news tonight. We're going to take a look at the gold and silver prices, some stories on cryptos, and we have a special guest. My buddy Bernie is going to walk us through the title topic of this evening's podcast, which is creating social liability where no legal liability exists. And he's got some very interesting points of view. So I'm going to turn the show over later to my buddy Bernie, and he's going to explain that concept. But first, let's get to the regular part of the show, and let's talk about what happened today in the markets. Well, first of all, Brexit. The ever elusive Brexit voted on in 2016, 52 to 48%. And what was supposed to happen was they were supposed to negotiate their withdrawal by March 29th. And failing that, then they would just leave without any type of arrangement or deal with the European Union. Well, all the deals to date have failed miserably. Both sides of the aisle not really liking the deals for whatever reason. Won't go through all of those. However, March 29th is fast approaching, and yesterday they rejected yet another deal. Now, today they voted, which really it's somewhat of an enigma that they would actually even think this way. They voted not to leave on the 29th without a deal. Now, that's essentially what they're supposed to do if they don't have a deal by the 29th. But what they ended up doing is saying, well, we don't have a deal, we'll ask for an extension. Good luck with that, because the EU has finally told them this is it. This is your last chance at a deal. So I'm not sure what extending it is going to do other than perhaps just make Brexit not happen, because that is what the EU president said. Juncker, he said, it's either this deal or you don't get Brexit. Well, now they're saying we're not going to take that deal. Follow his logic, then you don't get Brexit. Their logic is, well, but we're going to agree not to leave on the 29th of March, which means then you're not going to leave. And then you're going to go back and say, well, we missed the date to leave. Now, how about a deal? I'm not sure how that's going to work out. So it looks like there might not be a Brexit. And some people are wondering, well, how come the gold price hasn't risen because of this lack of Brexit? I mean, because of this Brexit deal. Because remember when Brexit was first voted on, it set gold and silver skyrocketing higher because it was the uncertainty and the breakup of the EU and to a certain extent, one of the large members leaving, and England was going to become a disaster and so on. But now it looks like England's probably staying, and that's probably making the euro re-strengthen and gold and silver not necessarily take off, although they were up today. So let's take a look at the gold and silver prices today. A couple of gold news stories. So the gold price did rise indeed today. It rose and it held that over 1300 mark. It opened around 1300, closed around 1309. That was good for over $8.50 gain, up 0.66%, and that's about where it is right now at $1,309. Silver rose also, but not as much. And remember my theory, for silver to really rise, gold has to rise first, definitively and for a period of time. And until that happens, the gold-silver ratio is going to stay down, and silver is going to stay down until gold catches a bid, unless silver catches an independent bid based on some type of excess commodity demand or some type of supply shortage. But on the monetary side, gold has to go first. Now, silver closed 1543. That's about where it is today at the moment in the after hours. That was up 2 cents, or up 0.12%. So gold outperforms silver in a big way today. What does that do for the unsustainable gold-silver ratio? Well, it drove it higher to 84.82. All right, other news stories in gold. This one's interesting for many reasons. One, it's not correct, or I don't know if it's misleading. It's just not a proper inference from what's happening. So, as we mentioned, the People's Bank of China officially stopped buying gold in October 2016. Starting in December of 2018, the People's Bank of China started adding gold again, and they've averaged the last 3 months, December 2018, January 2019, February 2019, about 9 to 10 extra tons, which is not a significant amount. It'd be a lot if you and I had it, but it's not a lot in the grand scheme of things. given that mining is between 3,600 and 4,000 tons a year, and given that China mines 450 tons a year, adding 10 tons a year, 120 tons in 10 tons a month, 120 tons in a year is not really going to put any type of strain on the gold supply. Now, Financial Times, most of your CNBC type, Fortune, FT, they're always bashing gold, and they're always talking how gold is a waste and gold is some type of barbaric relic and so on. And generally misunderstanding what gold is supposed to be. It's not supposed to be a competition with stocks. It's not supposed to pay dividends, but they trot out Warren Buffett's statements about it not paying dividends, and it's people would be scratching their head. They dig it up out of the ground and they bury it again, all that stuff. But here's what FT says, which is somewhat, it's kind of silly. China doubles down on gold and shift away from the dollar. They're not doubling down at all. Buying 10 tons of gold a month is not doubling down. They have $1.3 trillion in U.S. treasuries. They have 1,800 tons of gold already. They're not doubling down on anything. And then it says, aggressive buying by People's Bank of China will be a support for prices this year. No, it won't. A single entity buying 10 tons a month isn't going to support the price of gold at all. Now, if he said Chinese gold buying, meaning the country's buying, or Indian gold imports, because India imports 800, 900, sometimes over 1,000 tons a year of gold, you might be able to get away with a statement like that. That aggressive buying by or aggressive imports by India will support the prices of gold this year. If you're anticipating another 1,000 tons to be imported by India, sure. But the fact that the People's Bank of China might continue to buy 10 tons of gold a year and buy 120 tons of gold this year, that's not going to support the prices for gold this year. Anyway, interesting to see that that's what the FT's gold analysis is. So I guess they're as, in a sense, clueless as a lot of the gold channels who just say things like central banks are buying gold. That is all I need to know. China is buying gold hand over fist. Well, they're not buying gold hand over fist. At least the People's Bank of China isn't. Now, I'm sure the FT isn't talking about Sun Tzu and China's saying they're buying 9 tons when they're really buying 700 tons a month. Sun Tzu, act weak when you are strong. I don't think it has anything to do with that. I just think they don't understand the totality of the size of the gold market and what the People's Bank of China is doing in it. All right. What else do we got today? What's that, Bernie? About a half an hour. Bernie's getting a little nervous here. He thinks I'm going to cut him out of the show because we're late here. But that's all right. We will get to Bernie tonight for sure. Now, let's look at the cryptocurrencies. First, let's take a look at the prices. And by the way, let's look at the equity markets. Dow Jones up 148. That's up about 0.5%, up to 25,702. Still short of the 26,000 mark that we had in the Dow a few weeks ago. NASDAQ up 52 points, up 0.70. That's 76.43. And the S&P 500 also up 0.7, climbing up 19 points above to 2810. Now, the cryptocurrencies. Where we at with the cryptocurrencies? They've been kind of treading water recently, and let's see. Bitcoin 38.50, it's flat. Ethereum $131, that's down 1%. Litecoin $55.10, down 1.87%. Bitcoin Cash $127, that's down 0.16. Speaking of Coinbase, they're adding Stellar, it looks like, to their array of coins that you can buy there. I think you can buy XRP there as well. All right, let's take a look at some of the stories. Interesting one from Jack Dorsey. Now, Jack the other day has been in the news a lot for Bitcoin. He mentioned the other day, a couple of weeks ago, that he thought Bitcoin was going to be a global currency. He had taken part in the Lightning Network torch. He had then announced that Square, he didn't announce what the company is, a public company, announced that his Square/Cash app had sold $50 million worth of Bitcoin in the fourth quarter, $166 million worth of Bitcoin during the year. So each quarter sequentially in 2018 sold more Bitcoin. Then he announced that he had purchased a Trezor, Trezor. It's one of those hardware wallets that you stick into your computer. And then today, or yesterday, it was yesterday, he announced that he was buying gold with his Bitcoin from his Cash app. And this is, I think, from MEM, or M-E-M-E, MEAN. And what they sell are attractively priced. I think they're 22 or 24 karat gold, either trinkets. They sell trinkets like 20, 30 grams for about $180, 10th ounce style, or they sell necklaces as well. And you're buying them for their gold content. There's a little premium on them, but instead of just buying bars and stacking them. And Jack says, this is cool. Buy 24 karat gold or platinum jewelry from Men. At Men, I think Gold Money owns these guys. And currently value versus price, purchased it, tracked in real time. I bought with Bitcoin via his Cash App. Withdraw. So very interesting that Jack is out there promoting Bitcoin, and now the ability to purchase gold with Bitcoin. It's very interesting. Let's look at NASDAQ now. NASDAQ is pushing Bitcoin adoption. So is the New York Stock Exchange. New York Stock Exchange is in a joint venture or a consortium with Boston Consulting, Microsoft, and Starbucks to launch a Bitcoin futures, physically settled futures that would allow people not only to buy and sell Bitcoin, but to store them also with their storage solution, and then find ways to convert them into fiat so they can spend them at places like Starbucks. Then we have Van Eck and others trying to get ETFs off the ground. And one of the issues with getting an ETF off the ground, the SEC is concerned about the storage, but I think they're pretty comfortable with that because we'll see in a minute. There's a lot of companies that spent a lot of time, money, and effort perfecting their storage solution. So I don't think the SEC is as worried about the storage solution anymore. I think they're still concerned about the lack of liquidity in the market overall, and also the lack of insight into the trading mechanisms of the exchanges because they're not market surveillance agreements and services that the SEC can avail itself to. But NASDAQ is providing such a service, and if NASDAQ, if they can provide it for other markets, I'm sure they can provide it for crypto markets. Here they're talking about how they're providing it to a startup, but they also provide it to other entities such as the Gemini Exchange, which is the Winklevoss twins, VC Trade, run by Japanese financial services giant. So they're definitely, I think that the SEC is eventually going to get comfortable with the storage solutions and the surveillance agreements and eventually approve a Bitcoin ETF. And once you approve one Bitcoin ETF, the others will just cut and paste and copy what the others have, and you'll have a slew of them, and then eventually you'll start getting Ethereum and Litecoin and all the other coins. You'll get blended ETFs and so on. But none of that's happened yet. That's all speculation. Speaking of storage, here's the IBM. And again, I always talk about the institutionalization of Bitcoin. IBM quietly enters crypto custody market with tech designed for banks. So now you have IBM also vying to get adoption of its storage solution for institutions. All right, let's take a look now at central banks and what they think about all of this cryptos. Cryptos are bad, okay? So crypto assets hit from warning from global bank regulators for the first time. They're concerned that crypto assets have the potential to raise financial stability. I don't think they really know what they're talking about, but there's always these stories from here and there. Speaking of central bank, look at this. Bank of Japan, this is MMT in action, holds 43% of all outstanding Japanese government debt. That just means that the government issues and the Bank of Japan buys it, and it's in one pocket into the other, and they somehow manage to plod along with that arrangement. Now check this out. This is this is not The Onion. This is not a fake tweet. This is from the European Central Bank. They asked a question about where they get the money to do the QE. Quote, as a central bank, we can create money to buy assets. Now, look at that. Basically, if anyone else said that, we print money, we counterfeit. But because it's couched in the idea this is policy, this isn't some kind of counterfeiting rig we're running here. This is policy. This is for everyone's benefit. As a central bank, we can create money to buy assets. That is all you need to know. But in the same time, the European Central Bank is against MMT, modern monetary theory, which is basically, why worry about the debt? Just print the money. Well, they say ECB calls general idea behind MMT a dangerous proposition. I don't know. I don't know what they're doing themselves. Hardly any Twitter debate on economics these days can avoid touching on modern monetary theory, even in central banks' official channels. I don't see what they're doing is any different. I don't see what we just saw at the Bank of Japan is doing any different than full-blown MMT. It's a derivation. It may not be as extreme, but anytime a central bank just buys stuff with money they print out of thin air, admittedly, I don't see how you're far off from modern monetary theory. Now, here's one that is always disturbed me. A lot of people that are into gold and silver or free markets, I'm not sure they really like free markets. I think they don't like the result they're seeing. So, for example, that makes sense. Why is gold and silver not high? Well, there's not true price discovery because they are manipulating gold and silver. Okay, I can grant that. And therefore, but really what's behind it is they think gold and silver should be higher. Now, where there is something like a free market in fine wines or fine art or whatever you call modern art, whatever it is, people bid that stuff up. Now, I saw someone was saying, oh, it's indicating that it's somewhat of that the artists or the art dealers are having one over on people, and these people don't understand, and they're not calling their bluff that this art really isn't worth $50 million. There's some painting by this guy at a Russian burger, whatever. He was some Texan, I think, and made a lot of paintings, and he wasn't a very pretentious painter. He'd throw them in the back of his truck and then drive off with them. And anyway, they're like collages. You wouldn't call them masters of a painting technique, but he does have a certain following. And just like Jackson Pollock, you wouldn't call that fine painting. He just throws the paint on the canvas. But again, it's not for me to decide that this isn't art or this isn't worth anything. Again, if you're a free market person, it's up to the market to decide. But these people, they get very annoyed if anything isn't valuable, anything is valuable, and it's not gold or silver, well, then the markets just don't understand. No, the markets do understand. They want to pay $50 million for a Russian burger, whatever his name is, painting. That's the free market. So I say there's plenty of people that call their bluff. It doesn't matter. The price for those paintings is determined by those who want them. Same with people say Bitcoin is worthless. Well, to you it is, but you're not buying it. So it doesn't really matter that you don't like it. You can think that Moreau paintings are worthless, a bunch of squiggles. Doesn't matter. The free market values that stuff. And the free market is not everybody, is not all market participants. It's only those market participants that have an interest in the item. You know, it's an interesting one you guys can appreciate is in the silver community, the silver shield metal. Doesn't matter well, I don't like them or I don't want them. As long as there's a market around those coins that is willing to pay a premium, 99% of the world wouldn't give you spot price for silver because 99% of people don't buy silver. However, among the silver community, there are people that are interested in limited edition mini mintages silver shield coins. That's the free market. It's not the free market with a capital F and a capital M. It's the free market for the, I don't know how many people are involved in that market, but it's not thousands or hundreds of thousands, but it's a market enough that they can drive the price up of those mini mintages far in excess of their original price. It's the same thing with these paintings. So I think people should be for that. But even what it comes down to is oftentimes people don't like the fact that markets actually value stuff higher than they would and lower than they would. So gold and silver are undervalued, and that must mean it's a fault of the markets, which it could be. And then things like these art things, they're overvalued. Well, it's got nothing to do with the free market. It's that people don't understand. Now, they do. They just happen to like this stuff, and they want to pay for it. Okay, what else is going on today? Central banks, cryptos, free markets, gold, and silver. This was interesting. Zero Hedge was, over the weekend, was taken down. It wasn't taken down. It had a Facebook page, and the page was still up. But you couldn't, I didn't try it, but if you wanted to, you couldn't forward Zero Hedge articles by links, and it said they violated the community. So it didn't say how it did or whatever. What I always find interesting is a lot of the media outlets, what they do is when they talk about another media outlet that they don't like or a candidate they don't like, they generally label them far right or, you know, what's going to happen. Well, Bloomberg called Zero Hedge cult financial blog. says Facebook has banned users from sharing its post. So as I introduced that story to my Twitter followers, was far left-wing media outlet Bloomberg reports that cult financial blog Zero Hedge has been banned by Facebook. I think people should start taking to that, because who is Bloomberg or any of these media outlets to categorize their competition that way without expecting they themselves to be characterized perhaps in a way that isn't quite true. Someone wrote back to me, I never heard of Bloomberg being a far left media outlet. I always thought they were better than Showtime's CNBC. And I said, yeah, I never heard of CNBC called Showtime, but that's a good one too. But then they got put back on, or Facebook said, oh, it was a mistake. It's always a mistake for companies they don't like. And what did I say? Here is, citing error, extreme radical social media site operator Facebook restores Zero Hedge share capabilities. Never ends. It's all about the characterization of media outlets and candidates and so on. Finally, a couple more. Yesterday we talked about, and I've been talking about this for years, the new petrodollar backed by U.S. oil and natural gas, talking about how the whole petrodollar collapse and petro yuan and all that nonsense about how the dollar is going to collapse because Saudi Arabia is going to price its oil in yuan or Chinese RMB or renminbi, whatever it is. And that was going to be game over for the dollar, and China's going to crush the dollar and Sun Tzu and all that other stuff. And I had always mentioned that there are reasons that countries hold dollars far in excess of the amount that they need to buy oil from Saudi Arabia, and that at some point, the United States would not only become a bigger oil producer than Saudi Arabia, they would also become a greater oil exporter, and therefore people or countries would need dollars to buy oil and natural gas and coal from the United States. Well, that's happened. The United States last year became the world's largest oil producer, and this year they became the world's largest oil exporter. And countries still need dollars to buy oil from Saudi Arabia as well, because the United States still has Saudi Arabia in its back pocket, or vice versa. I'm not sure what the relationship is there, but we saw with the Khashoggi killing that the United States, Trump came right out and said they're too important. They can kill people if they want. It's none of our business, is essentially what he said. And nothing happened. And then we also saw that the United States pulled out of the Iran deal, and you know that Saudi Arabia and Iran are mortal enemies, two different types of Islam, and the United States is basically working very closely with Saudi Arabia. So now countries need dollars to buy oil from the United States and Saudi Arabia, and they also need dollars to pay off their debts in all the emerging market countries. So the idea that end of dollar hegemony, the United States owes $22 trillion worth of debt, and that is all I need to know. The dollar is going to collapse. Well, you have to take to the other side. The demand side for the dollar is very strong. There are other countries that owe far more than the United States does in certain respects, and there's no demand for their currency. So yes, fiat currencies, debt-based currencies, unsustainable debt, all true, but the U.S. debt is actually the most sustainable, even though a lot of gold and silver channels will tell you it is not. All right, and here's a point I made a year ago. I said this, and 4 years ago I said this was going to happen in general, but a year ago I'd updated. I said U.S. to become world's largest oil exporter, and that was in April 2018, and it said I thought it would happen in about a year, and it happened in less than a year. Now, over on this, things are heating up on the Donald Trump, Russia collusion, Mueller, Page, Collins, all these people. So over the last few days, Doug Collins, I think he is some kind of congressman from, I'm going to guess, Texas. He released the transcripts from Bruce Orr and the transcripts of the interviews they had with Bruce Orr with Lisa Page. And I found a lot of interesting things. And some of them had to do with the Bruce Orr, with the relationship between Christopher Steele, who was the supposed author of the, quote, Steele dossier that contained information in there that supposedly led to the launching of the Russia probe. And then you had Bruce Orr's wife. He worked at the DOJ, and his wife worked with Fusion GPS, who worked for Bruce Simpson, who worked with Christopher Steele. And there's a whole bunch of stuff about all the information went back and forth between them, very kind of incestuous, literally, I suppose, with Bruce Orr and his wife, and then the outside people. Anyway, the whole thing with this looks like this story about Russian collusion was concocted in 2007 by Simpson, and it involved Paul Manafort. It was like a plug-and-play story that they resurrected, and then it looks like from this information that's coming out is that Christopher Steele didn't even write the dossier that was written by Simpson, funneled through his wife, Nellie Orr, to Bruce Orr, who told his counterparts that this is not really good information, but they used it anyway. But the interesting thing about Steele now they're saying is the only reason they said Steele wrote it was they needed to have somebody who they'd worked with in the past that had credibility as being a foreign source. He's some British intelligence agent that somehow, well, if you put his name on it, then, it has greater credibility than if we put somebody else's name on it. So they put his name on it. He's been unable in other court cases he's been in to say he hasn't really even verified it. So there's that issue about whether all this will all come out, whether the FISA warrants were actually properly obtained. But the big interesting thing today was about Lisa Page saying that it looked like, under direct questioning, that Hillary Clinton was going to be charged with gross negligence, and even Comey was in favor of charging with gross negligence, but McCabe, whose wife had received money from the Clintons in her when she ran for office in 2016, he's the one who changed it from the statute says gross negligence, I think, to extremely careless. And then also, not only did we learn that from these recently released Lisa Page, she was a lawyer at the FBI, having an affair with Peter Strzok, who was the head of the investigation, also said that the DOJ, the Obama DOJ, told them not to charge her. So not only did they want to, the DOJ explicitly, according to Page, she could be making this up, said that to back down and not to charge her. Now that's obstruction of justice, one might think, if that's actually what happened here. And this guy John Ratcliffe says Lisa Page confirmed to me under oath that the FBI was ordered by the Obama DOJ not to consider charging Hillary Clinton for gross negligence in the handling of classified information. There's a little bit of a snippet there of his conversation with her under oath. This is sometimes last year. Now, I was going to say Peter Schiff, but I think his name is Adam Schiff. Now, this is interesting. Schiff says impeachment talks will continue if Mueller report clears Trump. Now, what's interesting about that is I would not make that statement. I think that's a damaging statement, because if you look at how the special counsel or independent counsel, depending which one you're using, this is a special counsel, not an independent counsel. If that person is tasked with all of the investigatory tools at his disposal, and he comes out and he says there's no collusion, I'm not sure what the impeachment talks will be about, because not generally, but specifically for impeachment, you have to have a crime or a misdemeanor. Now, if the Mueller report or results of the Mueller report lead to the indication of some type of crime or misdemeanor, well then, yeah, have at it. Go and impeach him. But if it clears him, you're now saying, well, we're going to find something no matter what. And that's kind of, I would say it's a fishing expedition. And it's kind of a waste of time, because you're not really, it's not really, people say, well, it's congressional oversight. Not really, because if that was the case, every time you had a president, what you would do, the opposing party would just have endless investigations into that president, looking to find something. They haven't said, we believe he's done X, Y, or Z. In fact, what they believe he's done is what Mueller's investigated. And the two things are Russian collusion and obstruction of justice. They're the ones in the position to make that determination, not biased partisan opposing party congressmen. I mean, they should investigate stuff if they actually think there's something there, but they're basically saying we're going to invest them anyway because we don't like them. We're going to find something, so we're going to subpoena everybody and we'll find something. I'm not sure that's all going to work out very well, but that's all dependent on what's in the Mueller report. I don't think it's a smart thing to come out and say in advance, if Mueller report clears Trump, we're going to do it anyway. It almost sounds lawless. It sounds like, well, then you're just being partisan. You're not really on the trail of anything, because if Mueller is called off his trail, remember, it's not like anyone's going to be able to say that Mueller didn't do a thorough job. He's been at this for 2 years. It's not like the clock is run out. It's not like he's been fired. You know, if he'd been fired, I'd say sure. You then go from obstructed of justice, go for everything. But to have this process, the process they demanded, that they wanted, and if it doesn't yield a result, they're like, well, we're going to impeach the guy anyway. I don't know. I think that is not serving the constituents. I don't think that because that can be used against you. Republicans wouldn't do it, but let's say until 2020 a Democrat gets in, then the Republicans should just say, okay, we're going to investigate this president. We're going to say no to everything he does. We're just going to investigate and ask for all their school records, all their bank records, and every last thing. So that's what's happening there. And now I believe if Bernie is ready, let me see if Bernie is ready. He's not in studio. He's kind of backed off here. But if he is ready, we will bring him on. Let's see if we can find Bernie. Uh-oh. We got a moron here.
Presenting the distinguished international news commentator and foreign correspondent.
This has been an extraordinary week in world affairs.
No, I told Hillary Clinton that that's moronic.
All right. Well, we've got my friend Bernie here, and I think he wants to talk to us about a few things. Is that right?
That's right. So, the reason I wanted to come on the channel tonight was because there's a lot of talk about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and a lot of people making fun of her.
Well, what are they making fun of her about?
Well, she was at Congress, and she was talking to the Wells Fargo CEO. He's one of the 1%, and she was speaking truth to power, and a lot of people were just laughing at her.
Well, why were they laughing at her?
Well, they thought that she was saying a lot of dumb things.
Well, like what?
Well, they thought that what she was trying to do was she was trying to say that Wells Fargo, they're a bank, and that they were going to be responsible for the oil spill. And then she was talking about Wells Fargo putting children in cages, and everybody was saying that this Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was being stupid and was being a moron, that she didn't understand how the legal system worked. Now, I'm not a lawyer, but I can tell you something about the legal system. Let's say there's a spoon company, and people need spoons to eat. And in the rich countries, the rich got all the spoons, and they used them, and a long time ago they were silver spoons. And the poor starved to death because they didn't have spoons or food. Well, let's say, for example, if you've got a spoon company, and they're making the spoons, and they're supposed to be making them out of silver for the 1% and for the rich people, but they decide to cut corners. So what they do is they put a little lead in the spoons, and then they sell the spoons to the restaurant, and the restaurant gets the spoons, and the people at the restaurant, and this isn't a good thing, they eat from the spoon, and they get sick, and the restaurant has to close down, and all the rich people can't get their food, and the spoons are no good. So, now bear with me, because this is not my bailiwick. This is the law, but I know this is true. The restaurant can sue the spoon company and say, because of what you did, my restaurant closed and I had a liability.
What does that have to do with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez?
Well, the people are saying that she's saying because the bank lent the money. The bank lent the money to an oil company, and the oil company then spilled the oil. And Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is asking Mr. Sloan, who's the CEO of Wells Fargo, how come you're not responsible? You should be responsible. And people are laughing at her saying she doesn't understand the law. She doesn't understand. There's a thing called consequential damages, and that's what the spoon company owes to the restaurant. And people are saying, well, she doesn't understand that Wells Fargo doesn't owe the consequential damages. But you see, well, hold on. I think it doesn't really make much sense, because the bank lends money to an oil company
and then the oil company uses it for whatever they use it for, and then somewhere down the line, one of their oil rigs leaks or something, then Wells Fargo shouldn't be responsible for the pipeline.
That's right, but I don't think you're understanding what's going on here. Let me explain to you.
Well, hold on. Let me play the bit
so let's focus on the
so that
Dakota
people
Access
understand.
Pipeline. Should Wells Fargo be held responsible for the damages incurred by climate change due to the financing of fossil fuels and these projects?
I don't know how you'd calculate that, Congresswoman.
Say from spills, or when we have to reinvest in infrastructure, building seawalls from the erosion of infrastructure, or cleanups, wildfires, etc.
Related to that pipeline, I'm not aware that there's been any of what you described that's occurred related
How
to
about
that
the cleanups from the leaks of the Dakota Access Pipeline?
I'm not aware of the leaks associated with the Dakota Access Pipeline that you're describing.
So hypothetically, if there was a leak from the Dakota Access Pipeline, why shouldn't Wells Fargo pay for the cleanup of it, since it paid for the construction?
This is what I'm talking about. This is what they're saying, that she's stupid. She's saying, why shouldn't Wells Fargo pay?
All right, hold on. Let's listen to the rest of it, Bernie.
Of the pipeline itself.
Because we don't operate the pipeline.
Bernie, she's saying they don't operate the pipeline.
We provide financing to the company that's operating the pipeline. Our responsibility is to ensure.
Okay, do you see what he's saying? He's saying, look, we don't operate the pipeline. We only provide the financing, and it's not our responsibility.
Well, see, that's where you're wrong. With all due respect, and I don't even know who the hell you are, but I'm glad you had me on here because I want to explain this to the American people. You're talking about legal liability. What Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and myself are talking about is social liability. What she's telling this guy is, you can't just loan money to anybody. You'll loan money to someone who's involved in fossil fuels, someone who's going to destroy the climate, and the rich are going to ruin this planet. And if we don't hold them responsible socially, they're going to continue to lend money to companies that we don't want them to do business with. That's the difference. You're looking at it from consequential damages and all types of legal things. She's not talking about that. That's why it's wrong to say that she's acting moronically.
Okay, so do you have another example of that?
Yeah, she was talking also about this company was lending money to companies that run for-profit jails.
All right, let's have a listen to that one then, see what you're talking about there. All right, let's see. All right, let's see what
Without objection, such is the order.
Mr. Sloan, why was the bank involved in the caging of children and financing the caging of children to begin with?
I don't know how to answer that question because we weren't.
So in finance, you were financing and involved in debt financing of CoreCivic and Geo Group, correct?
For a period of time, we were involved in financing one of the firms. We're not anymore, and the other. I'm not familiar with the specific assertion that you're making, but we weren't directly involved in that.
Okay, so these companies run private detention facilities run by ICE, which is involved in caging children. But I'll move on.
You see, and this is where everyone piles on Alexandria. They say, oh, she doesn't understand that Wells Fargo isn't responsible for caging children. But they are. Socially, they're responsible. Because if they didn't lend them the money, the companies that build the facilities, then there'd be no facilities to put the kids in cages. And I think that's what people don't understand. What we're talking about here is not legal liability, but social liability. And you will start to see more of this. And if I become president, the 1% should be worried about this because they're the ones who act in the most unsociable way that you've ever seen before.
All right, Bernie. Well, listen, we got to go here. We got to wrap up the show, but I want to thank you for coming on. And how can our listeners reach you?
Well, you can go to bernie.com and you can donate your houses. You can donate your helicopters, and all the rich people that listen to your show can send me money. I'm on Patreon at bernie.com. Thanks very much.
All right, Bernie. Well, thank you very much for joining us. And we're going to get over and see what's going on with our listeners. And let's check it out. All right. Let's see what we got here. Sorry for the delay tonight, guys. And I hope you appreciated our special guest, Bernie, tonight. On Sunday night, St. Patrick's Day, Seamus is going to host. I'm going to take the night off. Seamus is going to host the St. Patrick's Day extravaganza. He's going to just go through the show as if he runs it. I don't think I'd ever let Bernie do that, but it was good to have him on, get his point of view. Social liability versus legal liability. You know, fossil fuel companies, banks shouldn't be lending money to fossil fuels companies if that's what they're going to do. Shouldn't lend money to private incarceration facilities if they're going to do that kind of stuff. So I think he's saying that we're going to stop banks from lending money to companies that we don't like. And that's what Alexandria Cortez was saying. And let's see now what you guys are saying. I just want to get one more thing up here. Pull it up because you know I have to pump the mug. So there you go. Beer steins. All right. Now, let's see what you guys say. Sorry, in the beginning, I have people that are complaining. I was supposed to be on at 7. And I didn't get on till like 8 because of this nonsense with... Oh, I know. I want to show you why I couldn't get on. I'm sorry. You are owed an explanation as to what happened tonight and why you had to wait 45 minutes. I kept getting this guy. I'm not kidding you. Watch this. This is what I got tonight. Sorry, something went wrong. Try reloading the page. We're working hard to fix YouTube for you as soon as possible. So I got the monkey error. Everything else on the computer worked fine. I had the music queued up. That was When Lambo, and browser was fine. Opened on the side there. I was watching the people giving their comments like, "Where are you? When are you coming on?" And I could respond, but what I couldn't do was connect. And sorry about that, but that's what happened to me tonight. I was totally shut down. All right, what I'm going to do now is, you've seen the mugs. I'm going to put up the donation page, and I'm going to get to your comments. Oh, and by the way, later tonight, I hope the unedited version of my interview with SGT Report will be live on SGT Report. A number of times where he thought he'd ask me a question where I'd be able to give him the silver set to skyrocket. Gold-silver ratio is unsustainable. And JP Morgan buying silver, and I didn't bite on any of them. We'll have to see where that goes. All right, let's get to your comments here. All is one now is here. Let's see. Stellar will go up in prices in. All is one now. Smaulgld, when you buy a tube of gold buffaloes. I've never bought a tube of gold buffaloes. That would cost, I don't know if there's 10 or 20, it doesn't matter. You're still talking $15,000, $25,000. Do you keep them in the tube or put them in separate capsules? I don't know. I don't know how they come. If I were to buy a tube of gold buffaloes, I would keep them as they were. I think anytime you buy anything, original packaging, whether it's base, whatever it is, I think you keep it in its original packaging. So I really can't help you there because I've never bought a roll of buffaloes. Yes, DW says a whole tube of gold buffaloes. That would be a true investment. But I would say I would keep them as they come. I've never seen how they come, but I definitely would keep them how they come. I would not open them up, remove them, put them into separate things. It's the same like if you buy anything, if you take it out, you run the potential risk of destroying it. Now, I would imagine, though, and I don't know how tightly they pack those things, but one of the things that they talk about all the time with like the Morgan silver dollars, even the most perfect specimens that are uncirculated, brilliant uncirculated, they have what they call nicks from the bag because they found these uncirculated bags just sitting around for 50, 60 years. But that's not original packaging. They're banging up against each other. I don't know how they pack them in the roll. I would imagine they should pack them so that they don't bang up against each other. Now, if indeed they do bang up against each other, then it might make sense either never to move the tube so that they bang, which might be hard to do, Or if they're not packaged properly, then as soon as you get it, I would open it up and unpackage them safely. But I don't really know how they're packaged. All right. Central banks are buying the debt of their own governance. Yep, that's what Fiona Whalen says. Yeah. You know, there was a thing. DW says, Fiona Whalen, call yourself something like United Whale and start printing your own cash. I did an article on that. There was actually a movement in Italy. It was called like Sovereign Cash. I don't know. And they decided it was a script. You were able to make up your own money, and it was legal because I don't understand the theory of it, but people would just write their own money and say, there, I just paid you in money because I can do it if the banks can do it. It was some weird thing, but it had some, quote, currency. In Italy, people were doing it. All right. Fiona Williams, DW, I'm planning to... Gullible Travels. If you keep on defending them, I'm going to call you Comrade Lewis. Gullible Travels. All the markets, and particularly the metal markets, are manipulated. They are fake markets, not free markets. Well, I think you missed my point. I clearly said that you can call the gold and silver markets manipulated, and you can even call them fake. But part of that is because you would be less concerned about that if the price was manipulated higher. You wouldn't even worry about it. What I'm saying is that people are against the gold and silver markets as manipulated because the manipulation works against them. Okay? If it was working for them, I don't think they would know. But the reason I raise this is the same people that complain, I'm not saying it's wrong, that gold and silver are manipulated, they try to claim that markets that are doing well are fake too. And it's partially because they don't like the result. They don't like to see another asset flying. So, for example, like when Bitcoin is rising, those people are stupid. They don't understand real value. They don't understand real money, gold and silver. And the people who are buying this art, they don't understand that only gold and silver are money. That's what I'm talking about. They refuse to see that there actually are free markets, even if gold and silver isn't a free market. They're annoyed that their chosen asset isn't going higher. They're more married to their asset than they are to the concept of free markets. So I like free markets. So I don't think you can call me comrade. You may wish to do that because you may feel that your asset has been insulted and therefore we must rise up against the lack of a free market. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying if you believe in free markets, you should not begrudge some modern art going for $84 million a painting. That's the free market. That's not manipulated. No one forces those people to buy those paintings. All right. But you can call me comrade if you. I don't really care what you call me. Gullible Travels. Gullible may fit you. I don't know. I kind of like how silver is stable after up and downs. These markets, says Jack. Tell yourself, I'd rather it doesn't go up, right? Anything I own, I don't care if it goes up. I own it because I'm for the cause. Yeah. Jack's kidding. Yes, he is. Coins AZ says Smaulgld. Hello. I've never seen Coin AZ. Says hello, stackers and money lovers. That's mug stackers primarily, just so you know. How would you keep a case of Smaulgld mugs? No one's bought a case. Would you take them out of the box? How would you store them? All right. Fiona Williams. Whalen. U.S. went from world's greatest industrial power to aspiring commodity exporter in less than 4 years. The story reminds me of something from my past. Well, that's true. Editor. Smaulgld. Hi, Louis. Can you discuss dollar strength? Pumpers say it's falling, which is good for gold. Yeah, they've been saying it's falling. End the dollar hegemony. That's Ron Paul for the last 40 years. They don't take into account the full picture. This isn't dollar cheerleading. This is factual. The dollar is the most desired currency on earth. It's not gold. There's more trading of dollars, dollar-denominated debt, including U.S. Treasuries, than anything else on earth. The world runs on the dollar system. It's been running on the dollar system since Bretton Woods. All that happened in 1971 was they took the dollar and they said, well, you can't get gold for it anymore. Didn't stop people from hoarding dollars and using dollars. So that's why the dollar is strong. It's strong because the entire fiat system is debt-based, And most of that debt is denominated in dollars. And everyone owes, and wants dollars for the most part. So that's your answer right there. All right. What's next? Why am I getting... I don't know what that is. All right. Coins AZ. Most people will never buy Bitcoin. And most people will never buy silver. And most people will never buy a Moreau painting. And most people will never buy gold. That's not what gives those assets value. It's those that are buying them and how much they want to spend on them. So that's why people who fall in love with gold or silver or Bitcoin or whatever it is, they determine everyone is going to be using Bitcoin. Bitcoin will be the global currency. No, it probably won't be. But that doesn't mean it can't be worth a lot of money. We are going to go to a gold standard. No, we probably won't. That doesn't mean gold can't go higher. Look at palladium. Palladium and rhodium have no cheerleaders, no pumpers. No one's out there saying China is going to back its yuan with palladium. Palladium will be the standard. No one has said that. No one's talking about palladium. No one's talking about everyone is going to buy palladium. They're going to put palladium on the blockchain. It is going to be game over. No. Things can rise without everyone wanting them, without everyone using them, without them being money, period. Rhodium isn't money, never was, never will be. You'd much rather have had rhodium the last 2 years, 10 years than silver or gold, even though silver and gold have been money for 5,000 years. That is all I need to know. Well, no, maybe you don't. Maybe you need to know what palladium and rhodium were the last 5 years. You would have done a lot better. I'm not that I knew, and I'm just saying that. And I don't make recommendations. I'm just saying once you get it caught in your craw that only gold and silver are money and only money are valuable and everything else is worthless. I'd rather be 10 years early than 10 years late. And just repeat stuff that people who sell gold and silver say to you. And again, it's not a knock on gold or silver, but no asset is the be-all and end-all. All right. Let's see what else we got here. Yeah, where is Pablo? Maybe Lucky took him for a walk. Prashanti Girl says, Lewis caused me to have affection for Bernie. He sounds so endearingly stupid. The 1%. All right. Let's see. Fiona's gone. Let's see. Rob Moffat, banks led credit at a fractional reserve rate. Oh, yeah. There's no doubt about that. Everything in the world, all assets are fractionally reserved and derivatized and so on. That's absolutely true. Not enough brains in Congress. Coins AZ, yes, I want to see the SGT interview. Was it edited? I don't know. I have no idea, and we'll see tonight whether it's edited. I mean, I'm sure they always edit something, but I don't expect it to be wholesale edited. All right, let's see. Would you put each mug in its own capsule? That's what I was saying, Coins AZ. Haha, mug-shaped capsules. For those of you who bought the mugs from me, they've come in either a box. I put them in a box with paper. Lately, I've been sending them out in these styrofoam things. So they've been doing pretty well with that. All right. Well, I think that's about it for tonight. So I want to thank you for joining me today. And we will see you tomorrow night. And I'll give you 10 seconds for any lingering thoughts or questions you may have. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Good night, Bernie. Good night.